Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Lancefield, Australia, about an hour north of Melbourne, we have Pam Ahern. Pam is the founder of Edgars Mission, an animal sanctuary for formerly farmed animals. The one-time equestrian champion gave it all up when, in 2003, a tiny piglet, the eminent Edgar Alan Pig, trotted into her life and led her down a path she'd never imagined. Welcome, Pam.
Oh, hello. It's so good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Can you tell us what inspired you to start Edgars Mission?
I think you just said it then, Edgar. When Edgar came into my life in 2003, honestly, I had no idea that the path that both of us were going to embark on was going to change both of our lives so profoundly. I have always loved animals in my life from a small child. So for some people, it may seem a natural progression of that, but for me, it didn't. It took me to so many places that exploring the discomfort. You know, I'm a very shy person. I could happily have lived my life as a hermit, but now I feel like I live my life almost in a fishbowl. But I do it because of my love of Edgar and just the profound effect that little piglet had on me. No idea. And it's really to encourage people to think and to get to know these animals like I had done with Edgar. And I think they are the best advocates for a kinder world for them. You know, I found with Edgar when I would take him for walks in the park, you know, people would come from everywhere. They would stop what they were doing and they would come up to ask me about what's the go with the pig. And it was watching people interact with Edgar that got me thinking that the best advocates for animals are the animals themselves. You know, I could speak to people's minds, but Edgar so eloquently oinked his way into people's hearts and reminded them that that's where animals should really be, not further south in their stomach. And that's really how the sanctuary began, and my life really changed forever.
Can you take us back to that day in 2003 where you met Edgar?
It was, I'm actually smiling now. I don't know if you can hear the smile across the miles, but just even thinking about Edgar and that day, I was so excited. Just the backstory of actually getting Edgar. So James Cromwell was in Australia at the time, and I was working with Animals Australia on a campaign called the Save Babe campaign, and that was to highlight the flawed animal protection legislation that we have, and most countries have. You know, we don't treat animals the same. We treat animals not on their ability to suffer or their ability to want to form friendships and see the world and feel the sunshine just like we do. We treat animals on the shape they have taken, our familiarity with them and the intended use we have of them. Nothing to do with the animal themselves. And that happens in Australia by things called codes of practice. We have legislation that says what we can and can't do to animals. It's called the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Mm-hmm. Great, I thought, when I was growing up. But then I found out, well, we've actually got these things called codes of practice that get around that Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act that says that, well, if the animal looks like this, we'll treat them this way. And that just happens to be animal who's been designated a farm animal, which means we can do things to pigs, cows, chickens, goats and sheep that if we did to our beloved cats and dogs, we get away with it. You know, we're actually rewarded financially, and these animals suffer enormously as a result of it. In 2003, the Code of Practice for Pig Farming was being reviewed. This represented a golden opportunity to highlight this flawed animal protection legislation. And how do we share that as a not-for-profit group with the world? With James in Australia at the time, it was a golden opportunity to grab media attention. But could we get in touch with James? Absolutely. He is just the most amazing human being. He couldn't do enough for us. We got media interest, but they wanted a pig for a photo shoot. So I approached one of the children's farms and asked, could we borrow a piglet for a photo shoot with James, you know, to help pigs? And they said, that's fine, but will cost you $150. And I thought, well, pigs, I didn't have $150. I also have a bit of a problem with children's farms that I don't believe that they're truly honest with children what happens to the animals. Mm-hmm. So I lived in the country at the time and I thought, wouldn't be a bad idea to have a pig. So that was where the backstory for getting Edgar came. So I approached someone who worked at a pig farm to procure a pig. And the day was set, and I was to meet in this backwater of a pub in country Victoria. And in the back of the pub, the exchange happened with me and Edgar coming together. I was so excited. I couldn't tell you how excited I was. Edgar, not so. He didn't like me. I mean, his interactions with humans up to that stage hadn't been very kind. And we put him in the pet carrier, and all the way home I sang. I was so excited. He just buried himself in the straw. For him, he thought it was the worst day of his life, but he didn't know that was actually to be the absolute best day, because his life was to change forever. And in doing so, I think he's changed the hearts and minds of so many people. You know, sadly, he passed away in 2010, just after his 7th birthday party. But his legacy lives on in the sanctuary and in the hearts and minds who the work that we do touches. I just love that pig, and that's really what started it.
How did he pass in 2010?
Really sad. He was a farm pig, a factory farm pig, although he was a free-range pig, but he was an intensively bred pig. So he was a pig that was bred for exponential growth, and he suffered a condition with his feet, and he was at the stage where he just couldn't walk, and he was in so much pain that we had to help him pass from this world. And that is actually my pledge to every animal who comes to our sanctuary gates, that I will give you a life truly worth living. And when I can no longer do that, I will help you pass peacefully from this world. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we humans can do to these animals who we have deliberately bred into this life, is to give them a life truly worth living. And when that comes to the animals who are farmed for food and fibre, I think our society fails miserably on that, because every inch of their life is geared for human interests, not theirs. And if they do get a benefit from it, it's really just a collateral damage from the use that they can have of us, that we have from them. You know, these animals that they live in vast pastures and paddocks, and some of them are devoid of, shelter and protection from predators and even human care. And I think that's really sad, and that's only because of the use that we have of those animals. If they were puppies or kittens out there would be absolute outrage for how these animals are treated. But because we've put a label on that animal, it's justified the way that we treat them, and it's also circumvented our ethical thought about actually considering, well, is this right? And I think our society now is at the point now we're actually starting to ask these really, really serious, life-changing questions. Is it right? Do we have the right to do these things? And I think that actually a lot of people are actually now saying, well, actually, come to think of it, it's not.
When you think about that decision to help him pass in 2010, what sticks out in your mind?
Immense sadness, but immense joy that he had a wonderful life and he wasn't going to suffer. And I think it's actually developing that concept of selflessness. Like I would love, I think, more than anything to still have Edgar in my world, because I loved him dearly. Mm-hmm. But one of the things we start to learn about these things is actually it's not all about me. And I think that's when we actually start to think about this. So much of our society is geared, it's all about me. I want. And we're not actually thinking about the consequences of the choices that we make. And when I think about the consequences of the choices that I make, I mean, it was a reality. These are the things. There are things that we can change, and there are things that we can't change. And then we need to know the wisdom and the compassion to know the difference and to live with that in peace. And that is a challenging thing, but it's also inching us to the best of our humanity. And I think in animals we do find that measure.
Take us back to that 2003. You make this, clandestine exchange in the back of a pub somewhere, and you get Edgar, and you got him, and you throw him in a car, and you're singing to him, and you're driving home. And what happens?
Well, it was quite actually, I gently put him in the car. I'll just correct you on that one. I gently put him in the car and did sing all the way home. And maybe that's why he did bury his head there. I had also my little dog at the time, little E.T. He's this Chihuahua pug cross rescue little doggy. He went everywhere with me. He absolutely adored Edgar. He sat in the back, dancing around Edgar's cage, and he was equally excited as I was about the ordeal. So 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. And then the next day was the photo shoot with James Cromwell. And so my task was actually to get this pig. I knew nothing about pigs except you shouldn't eat them before I actually got Edgar. And he was covered in poo because he'd come from the farm. He absolutely stunk. I was like, gosh, we've got to do this photo shoot, with this leading Melbourne, it's a syndicated paper throughout Australia. And James Cromwell, this, celebrity, this Hollywood actor who's worked with pigs and all these sorts of things. And I've got to get this poop-covered pig who hates me to pull this photo shoot off to change the world for pigs. So there I was with my dear mum in the kitchen. We're washing Edgar, and here was our induction to Pig Care 101. When pigs get frightened, they fart.
Really?
yeah. So we've got all this. We're trying to get the poo off that sticky. Edgar's farting and everything. And E.T.'s really excited about the whole thing. We managed to get Edgar clean, and then Edgar formed a really, really strong relationship with E.T., my little dog, because that was my bargaining tool. So everywhere that I went, E.T. went. Everywhere that E.T. went, Edgar went. So we had this little Congo line around there. So it's actually quite funny. Thank you for bringing this memory back. So I actually got the pet harness on Edgar. It's so funny. I got the pet harness on Edgar before I met at the rendezvous. My friend and I, we went down and we had Edgar in the pet carrier. We wheeled him down the street in this pet carrier. We got into the front lawn of the house and we took Edgar out of the pet carrier, had the harness on him, and then we walked in. And because my little dog was by my side, Edgar's trotting along, and his pigs are so curious and they are so intelligent. And Edgar's just checking out the house and wandering through. We go at the back to the photo shoot and we're walking around, and, I'm sort of getting a bit carried away with my own success here, because the pig's on the lead, and it actually looked like I was actually, had trained the pig to walk on the lead, and he was following me around in this incredible relationship. Truth be told, he was just following the little dog. The photo shoot went incredibly well, and James and the journalists are going, wow, this is amazing. You've had this pig for less than 24 hours and you've taught him to walk on a lead. You're amazing. This is so good. Let's do an action on the steps of Parliament House in a week, and James can walk up the steps of Parliament House, with Edgar, and we'll call on the Minister of Agriculture to demand a better deal for pigs. Go, yeah, this is going to be amazing. It's going to create, national attention. This will be fantastic. And then I walked outside. I thought, oh my gosh, I've actually got to do this in public, and the steps of our Parliament House in the middle of Melbourne. Wow. I've really actually got to get this pig thing happening. So I would take Edgar down to our local park to get him familiarised with walking on a lead and people and being out in public. As I said, pigs are so smart. He got it down pat so good. He taught me so much. I was a bit lucky, though, because I did have that background with horses, that I had. And that has been my greatest teacher throughout my life, honestly. They have taught me so much about themselves and about myself, and reading and learning about animal behaviour. So I'm within all those years of working with horses, I could apply a lot of that knowledge about reading animal behaviour to help me with Edgar.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd go for walks in the park, and people would come from everywhere. They'd be stopping their cars and coming in and say, what's the go with the pig? And I could talk to the people about pigs, but they'd be rubbing Edgar's tummy and go, 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 go. And then he'd flop on his side and they'd go, oh, my God, he's amazing. He's so clean. He's the most amazing animal. He's better than my boyfriend. All these incredible things. And that really was, and they were smiling.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd hear little rumblings. Oh, my God, I eat bacon. And you could see little thought bubbles going on in their head beyond anything I could say. And one of the things that I'm very, very adamant about with Edgar's Mission, our advocacy, is that we will never tell people what to do or what not to do. Mm-hmm. We really want to encourage people to think, because if I tell people to do something, I've got no guarantee that they do it. I've got no authority to tell them to do it. But if we can connect with people's hearts, because I truly believe in the goodness of the human heart. Buried within even the biggest ogre of humanity, there is a good heart somewhere that has been covered up, obliterated, just waiting for that little seed to get in there. And it could just come from a pig nuzzling at your leg, that the world needs a kinder way of living. And I see it over and over. Not necessarily people will come to the sanctuary or meet Edgar or see something and just have this life-changing epiphany, but a seed will be planted that these animals are individuals, that their lives matter to them, and that they should matter to us as well.
What happened with the legislation?
The legislation. Well, for those people who are curious, the the action on the steps of Parliament went amazingly well. Edgar did everything amazingly. He was actually quite funny. He was walking up the steps with James proudly, because James is such a tall man. Edgar was just such a tiny little piglet.
Mm-hmm.
And he was walking up the steps, and all these police descended out of Parliament House because, they thought this is a riot. What was it? A Hollywood actor with a pig going to do? Heavens knows. But all these police descended, and they're telling him to stop. He can't go any further. So Edgar stopped, and he decided to have a pee. And it was actually quite a good photo. So he had a pee, and he took a few steps forward, and he took a dump on the steps of Parliament House. God, I love him. I think he's the only one who's done those things and ever got away with it, with people having a smile on their face. And it was actually quite funny. He's going up further, and the police are trying to stop him, and they're putting, and if anyone has a pig, they use the expression pig-headed, and it's actually as a determination, and they are a very determined animal. And the police, they found it out because they just wanted to keep walking. So the action went really well. In terms of the legislation, it was disappointing we didn't get where we wanted to go, but we certainly created change, which has laid the foundation now that we are finally phasing out sow stalls for pigs, for mother pigs. It's a very small concession. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, legislation doesn't change overnight. It's certainly on the public conscience now. We have, companies now proudly telling people that they're not using, sow stalls to produce pork, ham, and bacon. Is that better? I don't really know that it is. Is it better that we put we pad the baseball bat before we hit you? No, we shouldn't be hitting you full stop. But it's an opportunity to grab media attention. That's how I like to think of those things. So it's an opportunity to grab media attention and plant in the public conscience that these animals' lives matter, that they're individuals, and hey, maybe you need to revisit what you're eating. So that's the way I see it. The world is not going to change overnight. People often say to me, "Oh gosh, Pam, what if everybody, went vegan overnight? What are you personally going to do with all those animals?" Well, what are the odds of that happening? What are the odds they actually have to sit down and logistically plan for that scenario? But what are the odds that people are actually going to start making more compassionate choices in their lives? Well, that's actually happening. And I don't have to really cater for that. We've got so many companies out there that are doing that superbly. So many options now are there for vegans. It's really heartwarming to know that change is happening. And we're actually seeing the meat industry are taking this on notice. We've got huge meat companies that are actually investing in plant-based foods. Well, there's a writing on the wall if ever I saw one.
Now, what did you learn from that Parliament legislation?
So what did I learn from the legislation?
Yeah, from going through the whole thing with James and with Edgar.
I learned that I had courage beyond what I thought I could do, fielding media calls. I remember thinking, oh gosh, what if they call me and I have to remember the statistics, and oh gosh, I don't want to let the team down. And I had a dear friend with me, and she gave me the best advice that I've ever had. And she said, speak from the heart. Speak from the heart. And that is what I've been doing ever since. She says, don't worry about the facts or the figures. No one can remember the facts or the figures. But if you can speak from the heart, and that is exactly what I do. And as much as I'm in that position of discomfort and think, oh my gosh, I've got to stand up in front of people, and what if I make a mistake and I'll look silly and all these other things. I think, yeah, well, what if you do? But behind you are all these animals whose lives are on the line, who will die. And you're worried about you might look silly, and these animals can die. And so putting my own discomfort aside, pushing through that, I have become an advocate for these animals, and an advocate for courage, and an advocate for passion, an advocate for getting up there and having a goddamn go. And you may fail, but you're never going to know unless you actually have a go. And I just really encourage people to just have a go and listen to your heart. And I think that's your greatest guide. I am comforted that I've taken the position that I have. Giving up my equestrian career was something I honestly never thought I would do. As a young child, I adored animals. And then when I saw a picture of a horse, oh my, what an incredible animal, an animal whose back I could climb onto and could be taken places that only a young girl could ever possibly dream of going. I wanted a pony above everything else. And my mum actually often says, the worst thing you can say to Pam is you can't. And it wasn't because I was a belligerent child, those kids that just, have to annoy until they get what they want. It was a very determined child. I was a very quiet child, but I loved a challenge. I loved a challenge then as I love a challenge now, that indefinable moment when you say to yourself, what if? So the intrepid 5-year-old that I was got a scooter. And I took the wheels off my scooter, grabbed a pair of my mum's pantyhose, and I tied a tie to each end. And that became my saddle. And I used to ride the kitchen stool around the house. And my mum got sick of having any pantyhose and all the noise I made. She took me down to the local pony club. And that's where my relationship with larger animals really began. And it went on from there, and I got my dream for a pony and became actually very successful with the horses. And I thought, wow, this is my dream. I'm living my dream. And I would go to all the different agricultural shows and fairs around the country and interstate. And you would go to these big agricultural shows in each state, and you would stay on site for a week or fortnight or something. And after I would be doing my competing, I would be going in the cow pavilion and the sheep pavilion, pig pavilion, learning about these animals. And I think that was all my background. And then throughout my equestrian career, towards the latter stages of my equestrian career, there was this level of discomfort that came over me, and it was really weird because I always thought, no, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm really happy at this. I have this wonderful relationship with horses, and I'm successful. But there was something nagging at me that was telling me wasn't where I was going to stay. It was actually time to get off my high horse and really champion the cause of animals. And I remember I'd actually just won a very big award. It probably will be nothing to the people listening to this, but it's the highest accolade for the equestrian, the Gary Owen Trophy. And I was doing my lap of honour around the arena, and people are clapping and cheering, and I should have been just so exuberant, like this is the pinnacle of what you could do. And I was pleased with the achievement. The horse that I was riding was a one-time jumping horse. It did the jump racing, and he was in a paddock, and he was going to be sent to slaughter, and I saved him. We got him for nothing, and here he was, brought him up to this incredible award. But I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I was uncomfortable with a lot of the things I was seeing happening in the sport, that wasn't really valuing these animals for who they were. They were more prized possessions and trophies with what people could win with them. And I was uncomfortable with a lot of the training methods, and also why do I have the right to tell this being what to do? Like, why is he my concubine? That was really my get off the horse and really champion the cause of animals moment. And I haven't ridden a horse for many, many years now. Many years, and that's a real turnaround. That never say never. I didn't think I would ever not ride a horse, but and people say, do you miss it? No, I don't. I don't regret it, because I think I learned a lot from it. Understanding people, I think it's very important to meet people where they're at. Everyone is at a different stage of their journey of life, and I don't judge people on what they do. I think if we judge people, we could be judged as well, and we may fall short in other people's eyes. We are who we are. We are on a journey, and I think my journey is that a lot of people is trying to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the planet.
Now, you mentioned that there was something happening in the sport that made you uncomfortable. Can you give us an example of that?
A lot of the training methods that people would use for horses to get them to perform well. Some they would be tying horses' heads down, beating horses. I remember I was often laughed at by my peers because I would never, I even hate to say it, to whip a horse or even to hit a horse. I always felt, and this is even before I was a vegan, I was uncomfortable about doing that. And I remember one instructor I had this horse, and I always had horses that were a little bit wayward that no one else ever wanted. I got them because they were cheap, so they didn't have much money. And I think that actually started me to develop an affinity with animals, to get them to come on to my way of thinking, which even saying that now seems a bit unkind. And this horse was quite scared, and he wouldn't go where I wanted him to go. And my instructor at the time saying, you've got to beat him, you've got to flog him, you've got to make him more scared of you than he is of what he's scared of, so he'll go past it. And I just thought that was a terrible attitude to have towards another living being. I actually wanted him to go past what he was scared of because he trusted me, because he trusted that I would never put him in a position where he could be harmed. that was sort of the relationship that I had with horses and all animals, and even people. Like, sometimes we have to give animals injections or do something that they may be frightened of them, but I want them to trust me, to believe in me, that I will never let them down. And I saw so many things of people letting horses down. These are animals in our care. These are animals that we humans have brought into being. And as a result of doing that, we have a duty of care, a responsibility to make they have lives worth living. Locking horses up all the time, not letting them run free with their friends. These are enormous impositions that we put on their lives, and I think we really need to start thinking about those things. I said, not changing your way of thinking because that's what Pam says. And I actually say, we don't want to ever have the world according to Pam, because you're going to end up with a terrible dress sense. You're going to eat way too much chocolate and not getting enough sleep. So you don't want to do that. So you want to listen to your heart. You want to listen to your heart. Not those around you. Listen to your heart. I think that's your greatest guide.
Now, you had quite the distinguished career. Just to review for some people, you won the Gary Owen Trophy twice. You were Australian Champion Rider of the Year and many other awards at royal shows around the country. Now, when you gave that up and you just stopped when you were riding around, I guess at that second Gary Owen Trophy presentation, and you felt it was wrong, what was it about that made you feel it was wrong?
I think it was wrong for me. Not necessarily wrong in the sense it was wrong who doing that. I think it was the time for me to move on. I could have kept going on doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. I remember I was that little kid that loved the challenge. I loved the challenge then, and I think the challenge had gone. I think the passion had gone, and I think it was because there was an awakening in me that you needed to go somewhere else, and it was a position of discomfort because I actually had to chart new waters, and that's a scary thing to do, especially when you're an introvert and you don't really know how you're going to do it, but you want to do it. It was very challenging on many fronts, and even the people around me couldn't understand why I was doing it. One of my friends said to me, Pam, you're one of the most successful riders. Kids would dream they would give their right leg to be you and doing what you're doing, and you're just walking away. And I thought, well, if I had to explain it to you, you're not going to understand it. So I would just say, look, it's time. It's time to move on.
What is it about animals that makes you so passionate?
They're individuals. They're living, breathing, feeling beings. And it's my passion for animals. It does extend to the human animal as well. I think my skill set lends me to the non-human animals, but they're living beings, and I don't want to see suffering. And wherever it is, even if it's suffering to the planet, chopping forests down, I see that as something really sad. If I can make choices in my life that will reduce that suffering, I'll do that. I see animals suffering as individuals, and if there's something that I can do in my life to stop that suffering, I feel compelled to do that. I couldn't go to bed at night thinking, what have I done to make the world a better place, and not have an answer to that. Very early on in my journey, I worked on anti-vivisection. I remember as a child going into the city. It was a big thing to go into the city when we were kids, and we would just get a tram in and we'd wander around the city all day. And I came across this poster of a cat with electrodes in their head, and it had a word, "This is vivisection." I thought, what is vivisection? I went home and asked my mum that night, what is vivisection? And she said, oh gosh, Pam, she sat me down because it was a cat, and my mum loved cats, and we had cats in the house. We love cats. And she said, it's animal experimentation, and we need to do that to find cures for human illnesses. So really, it just seems really cruel. I mean, that could be Blackie, our Tiny. I would never let that happen to our cats. And I said, oh no, but they're different. And so that placated me for a while. But it started to see thinking about, well, are they different? Well, we may treat them differently, but they're not different. And so when I actually got on my journey being a vegan, it became one of my first actions as an animal advocate and animal activist was anti-vivisection. And it was so hard, because I always come at the argument, it's your baby or your dog, it's your baby or your dog, and people are always going to choose the baby or the dog. Trying to get people to actually sit down and realise that, the arguments against it and it's flawed and all those sorts of things, it seemed a really, really hard one. But then when we actually look at why a lot of people are ill, and a lot of people are ill because of their diet.
Right.
And I thought, well, maybe we can cut out the middleman, so to speak, and get people to look at their diets and who's suffering the diet. And we look at the largest number of animals who suffer under human care are the animals who are farmed for food and fibre. So if we can get people starting to think about the animals who are farmed for food and fibre, that will actually save so many other animals. Now, if you care about animals as these animals as individuals and what we're doing to them, you're going to care about circus animals and animals in jumps racing and animal experimentation and aquatic animals and marine animals. It's going to catch all of those ones. But if we just set the bar for the anti-vivisection one, we miss an opportunity. That is, to my way of thinking, that is where my skill set lies. There are brilliant people who are doing so much work for anti-vivisection. There's a guy in Australia called Doug Lees, and honestly, he can rattle off so much science and just to counter any vivisectionist. He's just amazing. I don't have that skills, but I can wax lyrical about how charming pigs are and cows. I can do that. Till the cows come home, and the cows should come home. And so should we. We should come home. We should come home. I think everybody is on their journey home, and actually that is finding out about who we share the planet with.
Now, when you were walking in the park with your pig, Edgar, and people were coming up and being very friendly with Edgar and everything like that, what do you think is the reason that people have become so far removed from farm animals?
Well, we've removed them from view. You drive in the country, and you will be flat out seeing a pig. We've put them in large industrial-like sheds. We've put chickens in large industrial-like sheds. You don't really see them. And we have this huge divide between city people and country people. There's almost this rivalry. The country people say, oh, don't you tell us how to farm animals? And people in the city, well, we don't really know how they farm animals. And I think that's been a level of comfort that we've actually taken. We want to think our food is produced humanely. We want to think that, well, if vivisection happens, those animals need to suffer it because they're going to produce this life-saving result.
Mm-hmm.
But when people actually start to put these things under the microscope and you find actually, well, maybe we don't. Maybe we don't need to do these things. And I think industries know about these things. Our politicians know about these things, and they really have deliberately kept the public from questioning, our animal protection legislation. I grew up thinking that it protected all animals. I didn't really think about it and didn't think about, well, why? How do we can't go out and, have killing cats and dogs for food, but why do we kill, cows, pigs and chickens?
Mm.
Oh, because they look different. They look different. Is that the only reason? Is that the only reason? Because, some countries, they do eat dogs and cats.
Right.
But we wouldn't do it here because they look different. So if we treat animals because they look different, does that mean we can treat people because they look different? Well, hell no.
Right.
But we do it to animals, and we have this little, cognitive dissonance that we don't sort of go there. But I think we need to go there. We need to go there. If we are going to evolve to be the best that we can ever possibly be, and what will ensure our survival as a species on the planet, we need to go there. We need to really explore those things. And I have so much courage in my conviction that I will allow people to do that. There's a good reason that we have tours for sanctuaries and we don't have tours of factory farms. There's a really good reason that happens. I'm not saying a good reason for us, but why the industry do it, why we invite people to come and see what happens to these animals and why they don't.
What is your greatest challenge with Edgar's Mission?
Enough hours in the day, and I can't change that. That's one of the things that I have to learn to live with and have to become creative about. And one of the greatest challenges was actually having people to help. When I first started Edgar's Mission, I was going to do everything. I was going to fund it myself with my working at a factory. I was going to do all the animal care because I love the animals and I was the only one who knew how they ought to be looked after. I was going to do the advocacy because I was the only one who knew how to do everything. And I was going to do the tours. I was going to do everything. And I was like, you can't. And my dad actually, there's a lot of my dad in me, although we were diametrically opposed on some things, we're very close in the others. And he said to me when I was a kid, Itzy, he used to call me Itzy. Itzy, you've got to make your own way in the world. You can't expect people to pay for you. And when I started Edgar's Mission, my dear dad was still alive, and he was a businessman, and he always wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And he he used to say that, caring for animals and the sanctuary idea, it's all very nice, but it's a Mickey Mouse idea. It's a Mickey Mouse idea. And you can't expect other people to pay your way. So it made it very hard for me to actually even ask for donations or people to come on board to help. And I remember when I was early days out doing advocacy and outreach, and I had a little pig with me, and we were talking about pigs, and people were meeting the pig and everything. And some people came up and wanted to give me money because they thought, this is really good, we'll give you some money to help you go and make a donation. I didn't even have a donation tin on the table because I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable. People always ask me for money, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's not so much what you say, it's how you make people feel. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to repel people from my message by making them feel uncomfortable. But then they give me the money. Well, what I had to put in my pocket. And then I felt really dodgy putting the money in my pocket, not the animal's pocket. So I thought, oh, gosh, I'm going to actually have to have a donation tin on the table so people, and all of these things I had to learn along the way. And then I actually learned how much it meant to people to help. People actually wanted to help. People actually wanted to feel good about helping. I thought, gosh, I have no right not to allow people to help. So it's been a huge journey exploring my comfort zone and other people's comfort zone. We have volunteers that come every day to help at the sanctuary. Now have paid staff that come on board to help make the sanctuary run. So I actually don't do every single thing. There's so many people that do things, and some people do things that I don't even know about. Like when it comes to technology, don't ask me. Ask me about rumen anatomy. I can help you there. But technology, no. And it's not really worth me, my advanced is actually going to learn when other people can do those skills. Even now while I'm talking to you on the phone, there's sanctuary members looking after the animals.
Right.
And this is awesome because it allows us to grow. I say Edgar's mission grew exponentially, literally like Edgar Alan Pig. We grew, and we're continuing to grow because people are coming on board, allowing us to help. And there's so many ways people are helping Edgar's mission, which absolutely blows me away. I'm just so touched that people who've never even met me believe in the work that we're doing for animals. And thank you if you're listening, if you support Edgar's mission. It might even just be sharing our posts. I think you're awesome. I really, really do.
Sounds like you really enjoy what you do.
I think you have to find some enjoyment. There are some parts, obviously, I would be lying if there's some parts that I don't enjoy. But if it's not your passion, I think when you live your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. And when you find your calling, and I really think I have found my calling here, and it is sad sometimes, when animals pass away, we get animals that come in that are just so compromised that we can't save them. But hey, at least they've got to sanctuary and someone has brought them there. And that's just a joyous thing that someone has opened their heart. They've realised what they choose to do next will determine whether that animal lived or died. And they've actually chose a position of discomfort, whether it's stopping what they're doing or getting their car messy. They've actually chose that position because they want to make a difference in the world. And that brings joy to my heart.
How do you feel when you have to turn away animals?
Well, we don't necessarily. I try not to turn say. There's never a blanket no. Mm-hmm. There's never a blanket no. We'll give you an option. We might be able to directly take your animal, but hey, we've set up a Facebook page for people to rehome their animals. We give them other options about contacting local media, going on local community groups, perhaps even adjusting the animal out somewhere if it's only for a short period of time. So it's never a blanket no. And that was one thing that actually is probably one of the uncomfortable things, that you can't take in every single animal. And we've sort of drawn a line in the sand that we are here for the animals who have absolutely no one in the world to advocate for them. Where in the case of an owned animal that someone can no longer care for, well, we need you to be a part of that process. It's being the good pet parent about, that animal intricately, and that animal is actually going to have a huge upheaval in their life. So it's really unfair that to bring that animal here and then us to move the animal on. There's the least disruption to that animal's life as possible we need to do. And it's also getting people on that journey to actually think these animals, they do form a relationship with their human carers. And sometimes I've had discussions with people, and it might have been, that they wanted to get rid of the animal for X, Y, Z circumstance. And when we've actually talked them through the process and actually made them realise how much that animal needs them, they've gone, oh my gosh, I didn't realise how much, Flossie loves me, how much Pepper the pig needs to be with me. I'm their only friend. They'll actually make changes in their life to accommodate that animal. And that's hashtag winning. So I put passion and energy into everything rather than just a no, which would be easy in a short phone call. I'll spend quite a lot of time talking people through a process. One of the really light bulb moments comes with people who say, can you take my rooster? And if you look on our FAQ page, our most frequently asked question is, can you take my rooster?
Mm-hmm.
And most of those roosters have come from chicken hatching projects. And this is a real credit to the industry that people don't realise when that chick is in the egg, nature dictates there's a 50-50 chance that they will be male or 50-50 chance they will be female. The industry's trying to get around it because they know they're being exposed. But we don't know if that will be a chick or a rooster. And when they hatch out, 50-50 chance. So if they do a chicken hatching project in the school, you're going to have 50% roosters, 50% hens. Where do the roosters go? And if people take them, home as these cute fluffy chicks as they do, they find in suburbia they can't keep roosters. Then they've got to try and find a home for the animal that they've bonded with. And then they find that there's not places for those animals. And then we tell them that this is the reality of eggs. When you go and buy eggs at the supermarket, you see those eggs that are produced from a hen. Where is the rooster? He has been killed at a day old. Can you imagine if every male puppy or every male kitten was killed at a day old simply because of their gender? Oh, Pam, that had never happened. Oh, no way. Well, why do we allow that to legally happen to roosters who are nowhere less worthy of our affections or our kindness? I absolutely adore roosters. I'm going to get a bit teary now because I've just had to say farewell to my beloved Red Baron, who is a rooster. If anyone follows Edgar's Mission, they'll know Red Baron. He was my little buddy. He rode around on my shoulders as a little chick. He came from the egg industry. Him and his buddy were gassed and frozen and sold off as snake food. And when they got to their destination, they were still alive. And the person was horrified that this was a living being. And they contacted Edgar's Mission and they came here. Remember, these guys have been gassed and frozen and theoretically are supposed to be dead. The Red Baron's friend, Little Biggles, he was really sick and he passed away a few hours after arriving. But Red, well, he flourished and he would right on my shoulder under my hair. That would be his little mother's wing, and he came with me and we went through the whole trajectory of life. He was a little chick and he grew up, and then it was time for me to let him leave the roost, and he had a band of hens that he lived his days with, and he and then he came to the sort of the pointy end of his life, and he started to get a bit of arthritis in his feet and health-related conditions, so he lived outside my cabin. And then I would bring him in of an evening, he would sit together and watch TV, we're all getting teary, like we did when he was a little chick, and he would eat his seeds. And then the day came when we realised that his quality of life, it wasn't that life that I promised him, and there was no interventions that we could do to stop the suffering that he was undergoing. So he was let go from this world, and now he's up there with Edgar, checking down on me all the time. So I have a real affinity with roosters, and I get really upset that society doesn't know about this. So we don't run around telling everyone, don't eat eggs, don't eat eggs. We tell them the story of roosters. And it's really important. And I've had people cry on the end of the phone. Not that it's my intention to make people cry. I never want to make people cry. But I do want people to connect. I want people to actually realise that the choices that they make in their life could well be condemning roosters to death. Now, people don't want to be mean. People don't want to cause suffering. But people are realising this happens with the choices that they make. And that just by making a different choice in your life, you can actually save animals' lives and prevent suffering. And that is actually one way we can help animals. So in that big conversation about, saying why I can't take your rooster, and these are the steps you need to take to try and find a home for your rooster, there's another big conversation. There's another opportunity we can speak to people's hearts and minds.
Do you have a favorite type of animal?
I often get asked that, and my answer is always the same: whoever I am standing next to.
Now, how many animals do you have on your property at the sanctuary?
We have 457.
457, not 458, but 457. And you count them every day, or how do you know you have 457?
We absolutely count them.
I mean, you got a big property, right? You have 100 and how many? 153 acres?
153. Yeah, 153 acres. And we do, it's part of our task as being the guardians of these animals is to is to make sure that everyone is okay every day. And part of it is, counting their heads literally to make sure everyone's okay, because, these animals, that they come to the sanctuary, they'll either be rehomed or they will pass away. That's the only way that they will leave the sanctuary. And so we actually look after a lot of animals in the latter stages of their life, in that palliative care stage. Animals may get sick or unwell, and they mightn't come up with their friends at feeding time. So we have to go and find that animal and make sure they're okay. Do they need to come into the barn? Are they just decided they just want to be a little bit later today? So we need to know where every individual is. We don't treat these animals as a block or a herd. When we talk about 457, it's 457 individual lives that we are responsible for on a daily basis. We often hear farmers talk about, we've got, 2,000 head of cattle or 30,000 sheep. What are the odds they have exactly 2,000 or 30,000?
Right.
They don't have exactly that. But they don't know. Someone could pass away in the paddock and they wouldn't even know. If you do drive around in the country, you'll often sadly see dead animals in paddocks. And I think that's really sad that animals passed away, and they didn't just, pass away, walk along. Well, sometimes they might just have a heart attack and drop dead, but chances are they've languished. They've suffered immensely, and no one has even known or cared or even bothered to remove the carcass from the paddock, and that's really, really sad.
Have you thought about what your life would be like without Edgar?
No, I don't think about things that could be, because it is. I'm on the trajectory I'm on, and I can't change it. And we can't change the past. We can only shape the future, and I want to shape that future to be a kinder one. What's happened has happened, and we live with it. We make the most of it. Sometimes we make good decisions, sometimes we make bad decisions, sometimes we make decisions that we don't even know how they're going to play out. But that has happened, and we can only learn from those experiences, and I think use those experiences to inform the decisions that we make. So I certainly don't regret the decision that I made. I think it's been a joyous one, and maybe it's what the universe had planned for me all along.
Now, there's a quote, I may not have found where I intended to go, but I think I ended up where I needed to be. Do you think this describes you?
Absolutely, perfectly, yes. As I said, as that child, I just, wanted a pony, wanted a horse, and that was what I thought was going to be my life. And I remember, at that stage, really, when that end point was coming, and it was actually, no, I was trying to push that thought away. But I think this is where I need to be. This is my skills. This is my unique skills of having all those experiences of, learning about the animals, learning about animal behaviour, the kid that loves a challenge, and all those things I've married together. Even my dad's business acumen, that I think is, I don't think I've got much business acumen. I think it's actually my lack of business acumen has got me where I am, because if I had it when I was back in the day, had a business plan and a vision and funded everything out, you wouldn't have got off the ground, but it was actually, throwing my heart out there and following it, and then actually putting all the pieces into play as we went along. I've got here. I remember a friend said to me not long after I started, look, I'll give you 2 years, 4 years tops, and it'll go belly up. This Edgars Mission thing. You're a nice kid, Pam, but it's most businesses fail in the first couple of years. But I'll give you 4 years. Well, we're coming up to 20 years now, and it has just been that vision, that hanging on to hope that the universe will deliver, and they have. And honestly, I didn't think we'd grow as big as what we have. I always thought when I started Edgars Mission, we'd stay at the old property where I was in Willowmabe, and we had 30 acres there. I actually bought 30 acres next door, so took the property up to 60 acres, and I thought that was where we would settle. But the universe started to disrupt us there, and a gun club set up shop down the road from us, and they had a shooting range, and they started to increase the shooting ranges. Not really compatible with an animal sanctuary down the road. So we said we're going, and that sort of drove us to this beautiful parcel of land that we have here. And it's in a tourist precinct, and that was one of the things too, the good thing about starting Edgars Mission, where I learned a lot, what works, what doesn't work, made lots of mistakes, make lots of good decisions, and I could sort of apply that to when we were looking to move the sanctuary to where we are. We're very close to Melbourne. It's very pretty. It's accessible. We can protect ourselves from bushfires. It's one of the biggest threats that we face in Australia. We're in a tourist precinct, so we get a lot of curious people, wanting to come and visit the sanctuary. What are these guys about with all of their animals? And everyone who walks out that gate, I can guarantee they are not changed for the better by the experience of being here.
Let's shift over to your vegan journey. How and when did you transition to a plant-based diet?
Look, it was way back in 85. It was a long, long time ago, and it was a huge epiphany, and I became a vegan overnight. I deeply cared about animals, and I'd gone to an anti-fur rally wearing my leather shoes and woolen skirt, and very quiet person was listening to the conversations that were buzzing around, and people were talking about this book called Animal Liberation. And I thought, oh yeah, well, it had me hooked because I've always loved reading, but they did have the word liberation in it, and my dad had always warned me about the liberationists, the communists, the wackos, the hippies are going to rule the world. Mm-hmm. But it had the word animal in front of it, so I was curious. So I got a hold of the book. Didn't get very far into the book when Peter Singer, the author, was talking about a time when he was in England, and he was taken to the local chapter of the RSPCA there by some mutual friends. Thought the two groups would get along well together, and they were getting along well together, talking about how they could better the world for animals. And then it came time for afternoon tea, and they served ham sandwiches. And Peter Singer thought, well, that's odd. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's got a point. Here I am, championing the cause of animals, expecting people to take me seriously, and I was eating them. So that was it, overnight vegan. I wasn't a very good vegan because down the track, someone actually told me the word is vegan. I'd been pronouncing it wrong all that time. That's how isolated I was. I lived in the country, and it was just so unheard of. And I was living with my mum at the time, and we raced out and bought tofu because that's what good vegans ate, and it was disgusting. We ate it raw. We didn't know you had to cook it first. We got this powdered non-dairy milk. It came in a box. You mixed up with water. It tasted absolutely disgusting. But there was no way I was going back because I really knew. I saw in front of my eyes and my heart and my mind what my choices meant to animals. And I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And it was a bit difficult at the time because we didn't know what to cook even. Heaven forbid, we were eating raw tofu. But that was it. There was no more. But as my mum always said, you can't sell it, Pam, you can't. And there was no way we were going back. And so that was a long, long time ago. And so lucky now that there's so many choices that you can make. I can go into a local supermarket down here in Lancefield, and I can get oat milk, rice milk, macadamia milk, all sorts of different milks that don't involve animals. I can get non-dairy ice cream. I can get vegetarian burgers that are actually vegan. In Lancefield, our population is 1,203 in a little country town. And people know how to pronounce the word vegan. Things are changing. It's damn awesome. It really, that gives me hope. That gives me hope. And the fact that there are these other things in the super vegan, they're not just catering for Pam. There are other people out there that are eating this as well in a rural country town.
Wow, that was like 37 years ago. The reason I say that is because I've been vegan almost 10 years now, and I remember the struggles that I had when I first transitioned. What was the struggle that you had the most when you transitioned?
Oh, just those things you could get in Lancefield now, you couldn't get them, unheard of. You couldn't get vegan food when I started. The thing that I struggled most with, well, obviously it's pronouncing the word vegan. I've got over that one. I think it was how I was going to sell this to other people because the lack of vegan options, the milk tasted so disgusting, and whereas it didn't matter. It didn't matter how disgusting it tasted. I was going to down that milk. But I couldn't expect other people to do that. I think that was really hard. The choices were, and I think there was possibly a little bit of frustration, came in there that the world wouldn't wake up because suddenly I woke up, that they were going to wake up. So it was actually learning that acceptance of people. People were good people. And I was that. I think so. It actually learnt me tolerance of people who haven't quite got there. So I think it was difficult for a reason to actually make me become acceptable, accepting of things aren't the way I want them to be.
How did your friends react?
They thought I was mad. But often things I do, people think I'm mad. some people refer to, are you still on that diet? And to me, it wasn't really a diet. I don't think it's a diet. I think it's a lifestyle that it's an ethics. And the fact that they had said, I thought, well, if I have to actually explain it to you, you're not going to understand. So I go, yes, and just plug away. Because it's very hard to have conversations then. I've obviously learned a lot more tact along the way through to say things to people without making them feel bad or disengage with you, because the last thing you want is people to disengage and not want to be around you. So I think seeing now, like the wonderful foods that we eat, and we don't miss out on anything being a vegan. Well, the only thing we miss out on is contributing to animal cruelty, which is probably a good thing. But there's so many, people can become engaged. You can take them to vegan restaurants, or you can even dine at places that mightn't be vegan, but they have a vegan option, and people can see the wonderful food you eat. So there's so many ways now that we can still engage people and encourage them to think, really encourage them to think.
What is one thing that's really exciting you with Edgar's Mission right now?
The animals. The animals always excite me. That we are looking at the succession plan of Edgar's Mission, where we've got a board that's really coming on board and looking at actually, it might be a bit fatalist, but solidifying the organisation so that it will go on beyond myself. So many people invest in Edgar's Mission in terms of their time, energy and money, and making sure that we're going to be using that wisely, and that will be solidified beyond me so that the organisation can still go on, although I'd love to say the day that we don't need animal sanctuaries, and I reckon that will come, maybe not in my lifetime, but really solidifying the organisation that it will go on and the animals will get the care that they need and they'll have wonderful lives truly worth living. I think that's pretty exciting.
Where did you get the courage to start Edgar's Mission? Because, you only have this pig, and then all of a sudden you decide you're going to save a lot more animals. Where'd you get that courage to start that?
I didn't want to get to be 85 and think, what if? That's all it was. I didn't want to get to be 85. And I thought if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen. If I wait any longer, it's not going to happen. And if it didn't work, if my friend was right and we're belly up after 2 years, I could still go and get a job and I could still live a good, rich and fulfilling life. But if I didn't do it then, I could get to be 85 and go, God, I wish I had given that a go. You don't want to have life with regrets. If you can pass away without regrets, that's a good way to pass.
Do you have a book or a cookbook or even a documentary that you recommend to people who are thinking about transitioning to a plant-based diet?
Oh, well, here's a freebie. Edgar's Mission actually brought out 2 cookbooks, and I always get into trouble because I'm the worst salesman. So you just give me a good segue in. And actually, these books are honestly good. So we brought out our first book was Cooking with Kindness, and that was contributed by chefs throughout the country. They donated their recipe for free into this amazing, delicious, my mouth watering, cookbook that people can try these different foods for their friends and their family. And that was incredibly successful, introduced Edgar's Mission to a whole different genre of people. I wish it had been around all those years ago when I was a vegan and didn't know how to cook tofu. Anyway, what they say, the best time to plant the tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So hopefully people won't make those mistakes I made. And then we more recently brought out another wonderful cookbook, the Kindness Community Vegan Cookbook. And that was contributed by everyday Australians, even some overseas people, put their favourite vegan recipes in there. And there's different stages, for the not so good cooks like myself to the more experienced cooks. All these beautiful recipes that they can make with vegan food, and the diversity of food. It's just anyone who says that vegans just eat salad really needs to look at these books. But there's so many books out there, and if people are a bit stuck, they can go to libraries and borrow the books. And I think that's always a good. I love libraries. And it's always a good, if you get the library, if they haven't got it, get the book in, because then someone else may borrow that book and be introduced to vegan cooking and see how delicious it is and easy to do.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Before I went vegan, when I was on my specific, one word would be conflicted. And to say now that I'm a vegan, I think at comfort. That's 2 words, so comfort.
So conflicted?
And comfortable.
And comfortable.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, what is the best way for people to follow you, support you on social media and the web in general?
Well, just Facebook page is Edgar's Mission, Facebook page Edgar's Mission, and we're on Instagram and TikTok and all those other things that I know nothing about, but our social media people do. We have an incredible following on there, so please jump on there. And you'll find our pages are very uplifting. We really focus on the positive. It's a nice place for people to come to feel that there's still good in the world. And it's one of the things that creates media interest for us, that people come and they just want to feel good and know that good things happen. People do good things. So please join us on our journey. Thanks again, Pam, for being on Plant Your Seed. Thank you so much, and let's hope we've planted lots of seeds today. Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.